Hi, Acadiana. Meteorologist Dave Baker here on a Thursday, October the 2nd. This is Let's Talk Tropics, a little discussion of what's going on out in the tropical world and what might be affecting the Acadiana area or the Gulf Coast. We do have what's left of Imelda, the National Hurricane Center, putting out its last advisory on that hurricane. It raced across Bermuda last night, early this morning, and is now becoming what we call extratropical. So it's no longer a tropical system in nature. It's not its own heat engine. It's now getting its energy from everything around it. So it's a cold core low now and will continue to move out into the northern part of the Atlantic and eventually dissipate over the next couple of days. Then it looks like things are going to stay relatively quiet, at least for a couple of days, but we have a couple of suspect areas that are out there that we're going to be watching, and then maybe a couple three weeks down the road, we might see some more action, perhaps in the western part of the Atlantic, and even some blips coming up in the far southern part of the Bay of Campeche and even the western part of the Caribbean, but that's not going to be for a couple of weeks. So we'll get into the forecast details on that in just a little while. Right now, we've got partly cloudy skies here in the hub city. Temperature 86 degrees, feels more like 91. I know it's October 2nd. It still feels like summer. I don't see any major cold fronts in the near future. Keeping my fingers crossed, maybe a couple of weeks down the road, we can get a decent cold front to cool us down and make it actually feel like fall for the first time. And also a bonus when you have these bigger cold fronts coming through in October, it does tend to turn any tropical weather away from the Gulf. But you can see we've got a decent amount of sunshine across the Acadiana area. There are a few clouds mixing in at this time, and it is a bit more humid across the region compared to what we were seeing yesterday. Pretty day over in Panama City, but some bigger waves there over the eastern part of the Gulf. You can see that a little bit more here at Orange Beach, kind of a rough surf there and some gustier winds. And you can see those flags there in the foreground in Dauphin Island, a few white caps there over the Gulf waters as they kind of approach that coastal area there. So things are going to be a little rougher in the eastern waters compared to the western waters. But on the western side, especially from about Mobile westward to the Acadiana region, there will be a little better chance for some scattered showers and thunderstorms. So for our friends who've got some boating plans here in our local waters, I think you'll be okay. East winds 5 to 10 knots, seas running about 2 to 3 feet or so. But out here in the eastern part, let's say you might have some beach plans, especially today or perhaps a couple of days down the road. Things are a little bit rougher over there in the eastern part of the Gulf. And speaking of any rain, this is what we're looking at right now. We actually got a couple of showers over toward Cameron Parish, northern parts of Point Capee. A couple of those sneaking their way across the Atchafalaya River over into portions of Avoyelles Parish. Looks like a little spot shower just north of the I-10 corridor. And then we've also got some scattered showers that are developing down over the lower parts of Assumption Parish, lower St. Martin, and into Terrebonne and St. Mary. And this is kind of drifting off toward the west. We're using the Hammond radar right now, so you can see the kind of general movement. This is moving off toward the west-southwest. So our friends over in Morgan City might catch a little bit of a shower here this afternoon. Let's go ahead and grab the Lake Charles radar. And again, it looks like sea breeze is trying to kind of fire up here right along the coast. You can kind of see that little bit of a line of those showers kind of lining up right there along the coast. That's the afternoon sea breeze. And sometimes you'll get a couple of scattered storms to develop along that too. So I am keeping the rain chance today at about 20%. Couple of things that are going to be happening over the next couple of days or so. We've got a big ridge of high pressure that's developing here over the eastern half of the country, kind of more of a ridge out in the west. And we've got a little bit of a trough that's right there along the northern part of the Gulf Coast. We've also got a bit of what's, I guess we would call this what's left of a frontal boundary, and this kind of attaches out to what is formerly Hurricane Imelda. And the combination of this ridge of high pressure here and some of this frontal boundary action here and more of a flow coming in from the east might get a little low going there over the Bahamas. And we're going to talk about that in just a little bit. Gulf waters showing a little bit more thunderstorm activity around a surface low that's right about in here. Then we've got our upper trough that's right there, and that's going to help to generate some scattered showers and thunderstorms here along the northern Gulf Coast. And then we'll focus more on this here that's east of Florida coming up a little bit later here in the broadcast. As far as Central America, we've got the thunderstorms down here over the Panamanian coastline. That's kind of a monsoonal trough, not anything that's tropical in nature, but we've also got a bit of a tropical wave that worked westward, and you can see that there's a lot of convection there on the Pacific side, so most likely we'll have some more action there on the Pacific, and then this is kind of a little bit more of what's left of that monsoonal trough, kind of a tropical wave that's still in this area too, but that's going to go ahead and move off toward the west. Not much going on out here, which is good news. We do have a tropical wave that's a little bit farther out in the Atlantic, right about in here, actually right about down in here, and that is not expected to develop into anything. And then we've got another tropical wave that's coming off the African coast, and actually there's a couple of other little waves that are kind of moving off toward the west as well. So our only suspect areas are that little low pressure that could develop along that old front there over the Bahamas and then kind of drift off toward the west-northwest. And then that little wave that's over the far eastern Atlantic. The wave we're seeing here in the middle, that will probably just be absorbed by this frontal boundary and kind of get caught up and whip around like that. Imelda, as I said, is now a non-tropical low. The National Hurricane Center putting out its last advisory. And what we'll focus in on today, I think, is going to be this frontal low. And you can see how the front kind of pulls off of Imelda. And with a combination of high pressure, we could see a low developing there. So real quick on Imelda, you can see this is getting ripped apart pretty quickly. It is no longer northeast, but as we go through time, I think we're going to be all right. That's going to dissipate as it moves into the northern part of the Atlantic. So let's kind of focus in on this particular area because this is the one that kind of came up on the National Hurricane Center's forecast this morning. And you can see there's some convection here. And obviously, you've got some kind of a boundary that's there. What we've got left here of Imelda, we put that back there. I don't know why that moved on there, but let's go up to Imelda, which is up, way up in here, kind of moving off toward the east. But there's a bit of a frontal boundary that just kind of comes off of that like that. So with a ridge of high pressure that's now starting to build north of this, you see kind of these clouds here. These are what we would call some low-level cold weather type of clouds. They're kind of spotty like that, and that's kind of an indication of some cold air that is sunk down to the surface. Not anything super chilly, but cooler compared to what you would normally see in parts of the Atlantic. And then with our little trough that's over here, you can kind of see the upper level winds are kind of cruising in from the southwest. So the combination of all of that together might get a little low pressure area to develop, and then gradually it would slowly move off toward the west into the northern part of the Gulf. Really still up in the air on whether or not this would develop into anything tropical, especially as it crossed over into the Gulf. We're going to have to see if it actually can make it across the peninsula of Florida before it reaches the Gulf, before we really start to get a better handle. But there is a little bit more moisture that comes off of Imelda, and it's kind of streaming in like this, and that's that easterly flow that we were talking about yesterday that's going to help to bring a little more shower and thunderstorm activity for us here locally. But we go ahead and grab these and just kind of fast forward these a little bit into the future just to see what the trends are. Now, this is the Euro model. And you see Imelda cruising away, and you see that big ridge of high pressure kind of building in here over the Atlantic. So again, on the bottom of that, that's going to keep that flow going in, and there's kind of a little bit of a ridge out here off the east coast of the U.S. as well. So this has taken us through the weekend and the early part of next week, and one of the things you're going to start to notice is you're going to see the moisture kind of building here, right here along the northern Gulf Coast. Now, the Euro really isn't putting down any kind of a low pressure area through Sunday, but as we go through time, you can see the moisture continues to build, but it does not appear that the Euro is too excited about developing anything there. And as we go into the latter part of next week, I do see a little bit of a front right in here that's kind of coming in. Doesn't look like it's anything super strong that's going to bring us any super cold air, but you do see the dry air start to come here over the Gulf waters. So again, anything that might develop out in the Atlantic, by that point in time, should get shoved back out like that. So the Gulf waters are still pretty protected, and that's going all the way out to 240 hours or 10 days. So let's grab the GFS model. And again, here we are at today. And you see Imelda is going to continue to cruise off toward the east, but you see that bit of a boundary there. And some of that tropical moisture wants to work westward here across parts of the Gulf and the western part of the Atlantic. And you can see that the GFS has a little bit of a low that tries to fire up there. This is very, very early Sunday morning. And then it kind of pushes onto the Florida Panhandle and kind of takes the moisture along with it. And then you see more of the moisture here over the Gulf Coast and pushing much farther inland as the ridge of high pressure kind of strengthens here over the western part of the Atlantic. As we take it a little bit farther out into time, looks like the GFS has a little more of a robust frontal boundary right here. This would be by Friday of next week and allowing some significantly drier air to push down into the Gulf, but then it kind of stalls out and stops for a while. There's that other tropical wave that's currently near the Cape Verde Islands, so by the time we get into next Saturday, so what is that, 8 days from now, we could see low pressure over the northern part of the Caribbean. But if you look over here with what's going on, oh, do not grab. Yeah, I knew that was going to grab that. I have so many windows that are open on this thing when I do this. Sometimes I'll get a little confused on which window I'm supposed to be using. But as we go a little bit farther down the road, going into, there's that 240 hours right there. You got a little bit of a system. But with a trend coming off here, most likely that would again try to turn away from the Gulf. So at this point, the Gulf, at least with two models, is in great shape without any developing tropical systems. Let's roll the Canadian model. And again, you've got Imelda moving out of the way here. You got that stream of moisture that comes off toward the west like that. So as we push this one through time, you see the moisture starting to gather right there. As we get into the latter part of the weekend, maybe trying to get a little low pressure area to develop perhaps right about there, but it doesn't look like anything too strong. And then if you watch over here on the eastern side, as we get into the middle part of next week, this is about Wednesday of next week, you see that the Canadian model actually has a tropical system heading off toward the northern Leeward Islands, but this big ridge of high pressure is going to kind of trap that and eventually, I think, just kind of lift it back off toward the north. So also on the Canadian model, you see there's a little bit more of a lowering of pressures there and some extra moisture over parts of the Caribbean and the southern part of the Gulf waters. We're going to get to that on some of the extended forecasts here in just a little bit. We'll go ahead and finish off here with the Icon model. And again, you see the two systems moving out of the way. This one doesn't seem very robust on trying to draw anything around the Bahamas. And then as we go all the way to the end of next week, you start to see a little bit of a low kind of coming there in the northern Caribbean islands, right about there. But that's all I can see on that. There is a pretty decent front right there. So again, anything that would develop would hopefully kind of curve away from the Gulf as well as the southeastern U.S. But again, the Icon model doesn't go out quite as far. It only goes out 7 days, so we're kind of limited on our extended forecast there. Let's go ahead and grab the Google AI model, and let's go ahead and we'll just start it here. And again, you see how Imelda is getting out of the way, but we're really not seeing a whole lot of other development of anything here. Let me just make sure I got everything turned on. Because there's really no, there they go. There go the dots. So you're seeing a few dots here over the course of the weekend, early next week there off the coast of Florida. And I'm only using the Google AI right now. But then you start to see a little bit more coming out here down into the parts of the Caribbean. So that might be that other tropical wave that's out there in the far eastern. I'm going to go ahead and turn everything on here, and we'll rewind it to the beginning. And again, you'll see how Imelda goes out of the way. And then you kind of get a little bit of maybe a blip there near the Bahamas right there. Something looks like it wants to try to cross over on that side, but it's really inconclusive. And then farther out, you start to see this other tropical wave start to come in. So this is about Thursday of next week, and then that lifts off toward the west-northwest. And then hopefully that will go ahead and curve away from the Gulf waters as well. Don't really see a whole lot in the extended forecast in the Gulf waters either, so hopefully, like some of the other models, it is showing that we could perhaps see no activity in the Gulf waters, at least for the next week or so. A lot of wind shear over the northern Gulf right now. We've also got quite a bit of wind shear here off the coast of Florida and over toward the Bahamas. There's a lot of wind shear out here in the western Atlantic and the northern part of the Caribbean as well. So we're not expecting anything to get too healthy there, although the water temperatures would allow it if the upper level conditions were a little bit more favorable. But looking at the global tropics hazard outlook, which takes us to week 2 and week 3, this was issued on Tuesday, and we got the update yesterday. But you can see that this area here and this area here lit up a little bit, less than 20%, so it's not really that exciting. But Central American gyre might be getting going here coming up for the 3rd week of October, which would be October 15th through the 21st. And these are a little bit higher, highlighting here over the western part of the Caribbean or the southern part of the Bay of Campeche. Now, that doesn't mean that anything's going to fire up in those areas, but it is a reminder that hurricane season does not end until November the 30th, and particularly in the western part of the Caribbean, Bay of Campeche, and Gulf waters, really we have to stay on guard all the way through the month of October, and then by November, we can start looking the other way, hopefully, if we don't have a season like we did back in 2024, where November was an extremely busy month. But we do still keep some of the activity in here during the month of October. It's a little bit higher than what we would see during the month of August. So, we always think August and September are our busiest month, but we really need to continue to keep an eye on everything as we go through the month of October as well. And October, again, remember we were talking about those areas, Bay of Campeche, Western Caribbean. That's some of the more likely areas that you're going to see tropical storm formation and track. And a lot of times they do push off into the Atlantic Ocean off toward the east, but occasionally we have seen tropical systems develop here and move northward. Had a couple of powerful ones too in the past. Hurricane Lily's anniversary is tomorrow. That'd be 23 years. It was in 2002. And that made a direct hit on South Louisiana. That one was a scary hurricane because it was a strong Category 4 as it was making the approach to Louisiana, and then it quickly lost a lot of its strength and ended up making landfall as a Cat 1. But even a Cat 1 did some serious damage over Vermilion, Lafayette, Acadia, and even into St. Landry and parts of Evangeline parishes. That one was a really crazy one with the amount of wind damage that occurred so far inland. So again, all of these tropical systems form differently, track differently, act differently, and there's always different kinds of an effect when it actually reaches land. So let's keep our fingers crossed that nothing happens during the month of October. Well, I hope you enjoy Let's Talk Tropics. If you do, please like this video, subscribe to my channel, turn on those notifications too, and don't forget you can hear my forecast daily on Big 102.1, Planet Radio 106.7, and Freedom 95.1. I'll be over at WBRZ Channel 2 in Baton Rouge over the weekend. We've got a show at 10 o'clock in the morning on Saturday, 9 o'clock in the morning on Sunday, and I will also be there for Tune In, which starts at 5 a.m. on Monday. If you don't catch us on TV, I've got a link in the description below. You want to click that, you can catch the live stream. I'd appreciate the visit if you want to come on over to Baton Rouge for a while. Forecast doesn't change much between here and there, so you can still get your local forecast, and I try to give a little wink to Acadiana every once in a while there too. Don't forget you can follow my social media pages both on Facebook and X, and thanks to everyone who's already subscribed to Acadiana Weather Today right here on YouTube. I'm Meteorologist Dave Baker. Have yourself a great day, and I will see you tomorrow.